Quote, in an information-drenched society that tempts us to choose unhappiness over uncertainty, it is helpful to remember that one of the key gifts of travel has always been uncertainty itself.
I could have been paraphrasing you. I feel like we talked about this, or that's a phrase that I know is probably not too foreign to you.
No, it's not.
And this really falls into the idea of preparation versus leaving yourself open to chance, which is really the gift of travel. And that goes into the ideas of flurrying your way through a city or using psychogeography to surprise yourself, to sort of force yourself into being surprised by a place. Because in a way, if we bring a menu of options to a place, then we're sort of bound by the size of the menu and what's on that menu. Whereas if we throw the menu away and we just, and this is a metaphor, not just talking about food, if we're open to any kinds of experiences, then you can experience what you didn't expect to find. Like once I was wandering through Cambodia, and I had a lot of great experiences back in my dirtbag backpacker days. And I'm a pretty tall guy. I was like the tallest guy by a head in Cambodia. And I got invited to a volleyball game because these local villager guys thought I would be the ringer. And ladies and gentlemen, I've never had my ass handed to me in sports so much by these guys in Cambodia who were so much smaller than me. They actually kicked me off the team. They brought me on as a ringer and they kicked me off because I'm reasonably athletic, but these guys just lived and breathed volleyball. And actually Asia is a great volleyball culture if that's your sport. And so I think had I gone into that experience just with my Anchor Watt map, I wouldn't have had that deep humility that came. And then the friendship that happened afterwards, you know, the beers, the guys, I made their day by being the 6'3" guy who was just completely inferior to them in volleyball. And that's just one of many experiences where you just, one of my mantras is walk until your day becomes interesting, because then things happen to you instead of going with expectations about something that will happen to you. You just sort of walk and what happens, happens. You let go of that uncertainty to a little bit because sometimes we're sort of task-driven people back home. But why not just let a day breathe? Why not just walk until you get your ass handed to you in volleyball or somebody invites you to a festival? I mean, this happens more often in places where you're obviously not from there. I think I was a little bit spoiled by spending the first 8 years of my international travel career in Asia, where I don't look very Asian. And so I was
understatement of the conversation. Yes, you do not look very Asian. This is true.
I do not look Asian. And so I had the privilege, and it really is a privilege, of obviously not being from this place. And so it's like, let's talk to this dude. He's not from here, right? And so it gives so many rewards. And I feel like that scab, that uncertainty scab, I peeled off a long time ago because it's been so rewarding in life. And I think maybe Asia cured that of it. It's just like, here's the pasty guy. Let's go bring him to our parents, or let's go include him in this soccer game, or let's go see if he wants to eat these boiled fish eyes or whatever. And then it just makes the experience more interesting. And so I think sometimes the uncertainty isn't really uncertainty in the face of danger, but just uncertainty in the face of not having a list of things to do and not having a set itinerary for a given day. I love museums, but at the end of the day, it's those weird, random, getting your butt kicked in volleyball moments that are much more memorable and lead to these connections that no amount of certainty could give you. And that's what uncertainty does give you.
Are there any particular tactics or recommendations? Let's say somebody agrees with this. They're like, I totally agree with what you're saying. Every trip I've taken has been pretty tightly scheduled. What do you suggest? Right? So you can walk until the day becomes interesting and get lost, especially in a place like Japan. I mean, it's so safe, generally speaking. It's fantastic. Plus the English, at least when I was last there a few years ago, I mean, the English level tends to be quite low. So you automatically get more excitement that way. And do you have any other suggestions? I mean, one thing that came to mind for me, for instance, I was like, look, if you're in Japan and you're wandering around getting lost, and let's say you don't find a cool park or this, that, or the other thing, some big, obvious point of focus, you could also just decide, today I'm going to walk and get lost, and I'm going to go into every convenience store and try to notice the things that are different in those convenience stores, because they are quite different. Even if you go into, say, a 7-Eleven in Japan, they are not the same as a 7-Eleven in the United States. And that might sound really stupid, but you start to notice a lot of little details. And any other suggestions for injecting some uncertainty if somebody wanted, as funny as this might sound, instructions for injecting uncertainty?
Yeah, well, I think to your 7-Eleven in Japan example, people who are in a hurry to get to those 5 tourist attractions don't have time to linger in the 7-Eleven and see how weird, there's those bean paste sweet things that you buy there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so really slow down. If you have 10 days in this country, spend them all in one town or spend them all in one region, and don't force yourself to rush from one place to another. One of the philosophers I quote in the new book is Byung-Chul Han. Have you heard of, I think he has a book, I think it's called The Scent of Time.
Oh, great title.
Yeah. Well, he talks about how you can't fast forward sense. Like of the 5 senses, like there's probably people who are listening to this right now on double speed or 1.5 speed. You can fast forward sound. You can fast forward through a movie, right? You can't fast forward through the smells of a market, right? Yeah. So he talks about smell is the ultimate slow sense. And basically his philosophy is that, as a Swiss Korean guy, is that it's the experience of duration that counts in life, not the number of experiences, right? He's actually a pretty abstract philosopher. His book is a little bit slow to read, but it's such a great point and applies to travel so much, in that it is that day where you go from convenience mart to convenience mart and see how they're different that counts. It's the duration of that day that is more meaningful than those 5 tourist attractions that you might have gone to before. You and I have hung out in Paris before, and actually we had a great walk in Paris, which we can talk about if you want. But oftentimes I have friends, students who'll come to Paris, and it's like, I ordered lunch and it took them forever to serve my lunch. And then I wanted the bill and it took them forever. I had to find the guy. And it's like, I wanted to experience Paris, but I was sitting in this restaurant waiting for my bill. It's like, no. That 3-hour lunch is the experience of Paris. You know, the Parisians are not standing in line for the Louvre. I'm not going to knock the Louvre. It's fine. But that was the most Parisian thing you experienced that day, was sitting for 3 hours and just sort of watching the world go past you. You know, if you're willing to sit still, then, you know, you are a spectator in daily life of the world. And so, I think about Byung-Chul Han's philosophy quite a bit, that it's the experience of duration. If you can find ways to savor experience, to slow it down, and to notice that from that cafe table in Paris, it's just as Parisian as any other part of the city, and you can actually watch it with more attention to detail. And this isn't just Paris, but anywhere. If you slow down and instead of moving through a place, let that place move through you for a while, it's going to be so much more affecting.